Imagine a dark, foggy village in medieval Europe where fear ruled the night. Families huddled indoors, terrified of bloodthirsty creatures rising from graves. Vampires, immortal, terrifying and hungry, have haunted human imagination for centuries. But what if they weren't just fantasy? What if these legends were born from real suffering, strange illnesses, and panic in the face of the unknown? Step into a world where disease disguised as darkness gave rise to the vampire myth we still fear today. The vampire myth. Vampires have haunted human imagination for centuries, creeping into folklore from Romania to the Philippines. These mysterious creatures, described as pale, with glowing eyes, sharp fangs, and an endless thirst for blood, were believed to rise from the grave and prey on the living. In medieval Eastern Europe, terrified villagers actually dug up corpses, convinced the dead were turning into vampires. But why were so many people certain these monsters were real? The answer may not lie in horror fiction, but in medicine. Before science explained disease, strange symptoms like pale skin, bleeding mouths, and sensitivity to sunlight terrified people. Conditions like tuberculosis, rabies, and porphyria made the sick look and act like something out of a nightmare. In their fear, people turned illness into legend and gave birth to the vampire myth. Disease as the seed of fear. In the days before modern medicine, when people didn't understand how diseases spread or what caused strange symptoms, fear took over where knowledge was missing. When a person in the village became pale, weak, or started acting strangely, it didn't seem like sickness. It looked like a curse. These mysterious changes in behavior and appearance led many to believe that something supernatural was at play. Among the most chilling legends to grow out of this fear was that of the vampire, a creature that avoided the sun, drank human blood, and rose from the grave to prey on the living. But what if this frightening figure didn't come from fiction? What if the vampire myth was actually inspired by real diseases that people simply didn't understand at the time? Several illnesses throughout history caused symptoms that resembled the classic signs of vampirism. And the terrifying truth is that many so-called monsters may have just been misunderstood patients. One of the most compelling diseases linked to the vampire myth is porphyria, a rare and painful disorder that affects the body's ability to produce heme, a key part of red blood cells. People suffering from porphyria can experience extreme sensitivity to sunlight. Just a few minutes in the sun could cause their skin to blister, burn, or scar, leaving permanent damage. This forced sufferers to live in darkness, only venturing out after sunset, feeding the idea of a creature that hides from daylight. Their appearance could be equally alarming. The skin might appear stretched or discolored, the face badly scarred, and the body weakened by anemia, causing them to look ghastly pale and sickly. In some forms of porphyria, the gums recede, making the teeth look longer and sharper, like fangs. The skin around the mouth could even become red or purple due to chemical buildup, creating what looks like bloodstains on the lips. And that's not all. Porphyria can also cause neurological symptoms like hallucinations, paranoia, or erratic behavior, making sufferers appear to be possessed or mentally unstable. In the 1980s, a scientist named Dolphin proposed a bold idea that people with porphyria might have attempted to drink blood to ease their symptoms, since blood contains the heme they lacked. While this theory is controversial and there's no clear evidence of blood drinking, the idea added to the myth's power. Regardless of whether they drank blood, the symptoms of porphyria were enough to make anyone in a pre-scientific society believe that the person was something not human. Another major contributor to vampire folklore is tuberculosis, TB, a deadly bacterial infection that swept through Europe and America in the 18th and 19th centuries. TB was once called consumption because it seemed to slowly consume its victims from the inside out. People infected with TB would grow pale, thin, and weak, often coughing up blood as the disease attacked their lungs. Their eyes would appear sunken, and they would often run high fevers, giving them a haunting, glassy-eyed stare. In an era when entire families could be wiped out by TB, villagers began to believe that someone who had died of the disease had come back to drain the life from the surviving members. These beliefs triggered actual vampire panics, especially in New England. One of the most shocking cases happened in 1892 in Exeter, Rhode Island, where a girl named Mercy Brown had died from TB. When her brother grew ill shortly afterward, locals suspected that Mercy was visiting him from beyond the grave to steal his life force. They dug up her body, and because she was unusually well preserved due to the cold winter, they took it as a sign she was a vampire. Her heart was removed, burned, and the ashes were mixed into a potion and fed to her brother in a desperate attempt to break the curse. It didn't work, and he died anyway. But this horrifying story shows how deeply disease and superstition were connected in people's minds. TB made people look as if they were being slowly drained by a vampire, and the idea that one family member could infect another made the myth feel all too real. Another disease that mirrors the vampire legend is rabies, a viral illness spread by the bite of infected animals, particularly dogs and bats. Rabies causes symptoms that sound straight out of horror fiction. In its advanced stages, rabies causes aggression, confusion, hallucinations, and violent outbursts. Victims often foam at the mouth and may even attempt to bite others. The disease also causes photophobia, or an extreme sensitivity to light, and hydrophobia, a fear or inability to drink water, which ties directly into the folklore that says vampires avoid sunlight and holy water. Some sufferers experience sleep disruptions and may wander at night, leading to stories of night-stalking creatures. In 1998, a Spanish neurologist named Juan Alonso studied records of rabies outbreaks in Eastern Europe and noticed that they closely matched the timing and locations of vampire myths. His research suggested that entire communities might have watched people transform from healthy neighbors into violent, foaming, sun-fearing monsters, all within weeks of being bitten. Each of these diseases, Porphyria, tuberculosis, and rabies, offers powerful clues to the real origins of the vampire myth. All three diseases share symptoms that match up with traits we now associate with vampires: sensitivity to sunlight, pale skin, blood-related effects, madness, nocturnal habits, and even violent biting. In a world without scientific knowledge, people tried to explain what they saw with the only tools they had: folklore, superstition, and fear. As a result, sick and suffering individuals were often turned into legends of horror, misunderstood corpses. Beyond diseases, the vampire myth was also shaped by how people interpreted death and decomposition. In medieval Europe, the dead were often buried quickly, sometimes before they were truly deceased due to limited medical knowledge. This led to horrifying cases of people being buried alive, only to awaken later. If a grave was opened and a body appeared bloated, with blood around the mouth, a natural result of decomposition, it could be mistaken for a vampire that had been feeding. Villagers also noticed that some corpses didn't decay as expected. In cold climates or in tightly packed soil, bodies could remain preserved, leading people to believe they were undead. Hair and nails might appear to grow, actually a result of skin shrinking, and gases could cause bodies to move or groan when disturbed. The role of fear and superstition. The vampire myth wasn't just about physical symptoms, it was also about human psychology. In times of crisis, like plagues or famines, people needed explanations for their suffering. Vampires became a convenient scapegoat. Blaming a supernatural creature was easier than accepting that death was random or inexplicable. This fear was amplified by cultural practices, like the Christian belief in the power of blood, linked to Christ's sacrifice, or the use of garlic and religious symbols to ward off evil. In Eastern Europe, where vampire lore was strongest, communities were often isolated and deeply superstitious. Stories of vampires spread like wildfire, fueled by real events like mysterious deaths or grave disturbances. These tales were passed down orally, growing more elaborate with each telling. By the 18th century, vampire hysteria was so widespread that scholars and even governments began investigating. In 1732, Austrian officials documented cases of alleged vampires in Serbia, noting how villagers staked and burned bodies to stop the curse. From folklore to pop culture, the vampire myth didn't stay confined to rural villages. By the 19th century, it had captured the imagination of writers and artists. John Polidori's The Vampire, 1819, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1897, transformed the vampire from a grotesque corpse into a charismatic, seductive figure. These stories drew on the old folklore but added new elements, like the vampire's charm and aristocratic nature. Stoker's Dracula, inspired by Vlad the Impaler, a 15th century Romanian ruler, cemented the image of the vampire as a sophisticated predator. Today, vampires are a pop culture juggernaut, from Twilight to True Blood. While modern vampires are often romanticized, their origins lie in the gritty reality of disease and fear. Why the myth endures? So why do vampires still captivate us? Part of it is their versatility. Vampires can represent different fears in different eras. Disease in the Middle Ages, forbidden desire in the Victorian era, or existential angst today. They're also a mirror for our mortality. Vampires cheat death, something humans have always longed for, yet their existence comes at a terrible cost. This tension between eternal life and monstrous nature keeps us hooked. Moreover, the vampire myth reminds us of our past. It's a window into how our ancestors grappled with the unknown, turning sickness and death into stories that help them cope. In conclusion, the next time you watch a vampire movie or read a spooky novel, remember this. The real origin of vampires isn't a supernatural curse or a demonic force. It's the very human struggle to understand disease, death, and the mysteries of the body. Conditions like porphyria, tuberculosis, and rabies, combined with the grim realities of decomposition, gave birth to one of the most enduring myths in history. Vampires may not stalk the night, but their story is a haunting reminder of how fear and ignorance can create monsters more terrifying than any reality. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching and supporting us.